Guys, we talked a lot about the NBA shutdown in another Garden report that's up on our website at clnsmedia.com, but we're going to talk about how this directly affects the Celtics. They obviously have been playing really well this season, but most recently they've been on a skid. They've lost 4 of their last home games. What does this shutdown at this point in time mean for Boston?
Well, I think most importantly, if you're talking about purely the basketball perspective, they can get healthy, right? I mean, there's no reason now, once their self-quarantine is over after playing the Utah Jazz and Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell, last Friday night at TD Garden, once that self-quarantine is over, they can kind of get back to work to getting their bodies healthy, working out on their own. Obviously, the type of healing that Jaylen Brown needs to do to get his hamstring right. Obviously, there are other players with bumps and bruises who have been working through things all season long, namely Kemba Walker and his knees. This, assuming, that the NBA returns at some point this spring and actually conducts the playoffs, this could be very beneficial for the Celtics.
I think it's obviously very interesting to see how NBA teams return. Like, what type of shape are these players in? Have they remained in town of where their team is? Are they going to the training facility regularly? How disciplined are these guys? And I think the Celtics do have an advantage there because they have a great organization. That's one of the things that you always hear players talk about is that, the Celtics organization is so strong, and it's, they care about the players and they care about the people within. So I think that's a real benefit to them, is that they can sort of remain together. They have an amazing training facility, assuming that that remains open. And, these guys have everything they need to keep in shape, keep their minds right. They can still play together, as long as they are all checked out and they're not contagious or anything, they can continue to practice together. It's going to be an interesting 30-plus days because I'm willing to bet that some players won't have the discipline on other teams that other players will have on other teams. It's going to be very interesting.
Here's what I think the NBA would seriously benefit from considering. Having another preseason before starting up the playoffs again, or having a preseason of a week, let's say a week of exhibition games, let's say 2 exhibition games over the course of a week, just to get your legs under you. Then have a week of regular season games to set the seedings going into the playoffs. I think there's certainly time to execute this. The obviously big challenge of making sure that the buildings logistically would be available between the NBA and the NHL. But if I'm the NBA right now, I'm hoping and praying that the league would be able to resume meaningful games by May 1st and then continue the playoffs up until July 1st or the 4th of July. There's no reason at this point, because this is such an unprecedented event in American sports, that the NBA and the NHL, for that matter, couldn't extend into early July just to get their playoffs over and have some of these have these owners and the employees inside these buildings and these organizations recoup some of the billions of dollars that are going to be lost in revenue.
Right. And going back to the Celtics and the team and how this affects them, Jason Tatum's been on a roll. We said there's been a lot of players that have dealt with some lingering issues, like Kemba Walker has just been kind of regaining those minutes and that conditioning back from that hiatus that he had to miss with his knee injury. Gordon Hayward has been playing really well. What player does this affect negatively the most and kind of bring them out of their swing of positive momentum?
I would say Gordon Hayward, because he was just finding a rhythm.
Took my answer.
Yeah, well, Jimmy and I can agree on this one.
Great minds.
Great minds, indeed, Jimmy. I think Gordon Hayward was finding his rhythm. He was obviously somebody who looked like his shot had returned, and he knew when to shoot and when to dribble, penetrate, and dish the ball. And that was something I think he struggled with a lot, even in his first couple of years with the Celtics. He didn't look like he knew the rhythm of the offense and the rhythm of the guys he was playing with. And I think, to have captured that and now to take a break of at minimum 30 days off from that is going to disrupt that.
Yeah, I think that's obviously a really good answer. And not to even mention, like, this was a big, season for him going into an option year. And now he has a serious question that he has to ask himself regarding his, future with the Celtics or on another team. But the other answer is Jason Tatum. I think honestly, like he was so hot. He's one of the hottest NBA players going into Wednesday, and whenever you're feeling it like that, you just want the games to keep rolling. Like I want to keep playing. I'm on a hot streak. So naturally, to take a 30-day plus break, of course that's bad news for Jason Tatum, who is completely on fire. So that's not good news for him. But I think that he's shown everybody so much this year, and I think he's matured so much that I don't think it's going to take him too long to find his stroke again and get back to where he was.
Yeah, and I think people would say that this could be good for Kemba Walker, who has been dealing with those knee issues, but he was coming back, and he actually said after the game against the Jazz last Friday that he had felt the best he has in a really long time. So I think this actually hurts Kemba Walker pretty hard because he was already working to build that conditioning back up. He was on a minutes restriction that he didn't want to have to deal with. He said time and time again how he's never had to miss significant time in his entire NBA career. And now here he is, another hiatus when he's already had to deal with multiple throughout this season and had to deal with the highs and lows mentally of what that means for him. So I think obviously we've mentioned the three big guys minus Jaylen Brown, who's been out with a hamstring injury, but it affects everyone obviously. But we do have to mention every NBA team is at the same disadvantage here. Every team is suspended. Every team is going to have to build up their conditioning again. But when the season does resume, assuming it does, how do you think that the Celtics are going to ease back into things?
Jimmy?
Yeah, they're gonna have no choice. I don't really think easing into things is an option. What I think is gonna happen is it's gonna be a little bit longer. Listen, I have no idea what's gonna happen. Let me start off by saying
none of us do.
So I feel uncomfortable even trying to predict if these guys are ever gonna play again this season. But let's just say at some point they return. What I think might happen, or what I think kind of should happen, is kind of like what Treg said: throw a handful of games out there, and then I want to go every team bracket style. We missed out on the NCAA tournament this year. I think a lot of basketball fans would be open to a bracket style playoff because this really isn't a full season anyways. I don't really think a full playoff. I think there's always going to be that asterisk there.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Bracket style, and whoever ends up at the end is the champion.
Understand, Jimmy. Understand. Okay, these NBA owners want to recoup their losses because you're going to forfeit at least 30 days of the NBA schedule, right? At the minimum, probably.
I know there's a business
45. It is a business, and I think certainly NBA owners are more inclined to say, yeah, sure, extend the season to July 4th. We can, have the NBA Finals over by the 4th of July, and certainly you'll recoup so much more of those profits, and not to mention the TV revenue. A bracket format, while it would be nice to kind of replicate,
awesome.
It would, yeah, but I don't think that's what NBA fans want. The NBA fans are not the NCAA fans. By the way, if you want my opinion, the NCAA tournament's going to be played in May, assuming that these teams can hold it together and these colleges can hold it together. You're going to avoid a huge logistical nightmare with the NCAA trying to hear appeals about whether or not some players should be extended their time in college, right, their eligibility. I think I wouldn't give up on the NCAA March Madness quite yet being extended into late April or early May. But that being said, I still think that the NBA season, if the decision is made by the Board of Governors in the NBA to extend this or to continue the season, I look for the playoffs to resume sometime in May. I'm keeping my fingers crossed. That's all we can do.
But Tregs, you have to understand, it's not just the owner's decision. There's a players' union. The players have a say in this, and you expect the players to be like, okay, yeah, let's until July.
I absolutely expect that. If the NBA owners, Board of Governors, response to that is, look, there is a disaster clause that we can withhold pay,
right,
partial pay to these players based on that act of God, so to speak, a clause in the NBA players in the collective bargaining agreement with the Players Union. Players Association would much rather play those games and have those games played in May and June than they would just forfeit the rest of the regular season and playoffs.
All right, well, this Garden Report is brought to you by Vincero Watches. Vincero creates exceptionally crafted watches at an incredibly affordable price, and exclusively for our audience, Vincero is offering an extra 15% off their already affordable watches. Go to VinceroWatches.com and use code GARDEN. That's VinceroWatches.com and use code GARDEN. For all the rest of our content, we don't stop, even though the sports world is. Head to our website at CLNSmedia.com and subscribe to our YouTube channel at CLNS Media.
Cool. Give me that bracket style, baby.